Hello guys, welcome back to codingdemon, and this is video number 2. If you want to build a high-performance backend system, relying on libraries for file system navigation is just a waste of time. As a result, today we're going to build a recursive directory crawler from scratch in C++. But before we write a single line of code, we need to understand how the Linux kernel actually views a folder. In Linux, a directory is not a physical box holding files. It is actually just a special text file that contains a list of where these other files are located, as shown. Each line in that file points to a specific file or subfolder. To read this list of locations, or these lists that we have, POSIX gives us two core structures, the dir and dirent structures. Dir is just meaning directory, and dirent means directory entry. Dir is an opaque data type. An opaque data type entails it's basically a function that conceals its internal mechanics and raw data from the rest of your application. It basically forces clean abstraction where you interact with the object solely through functions. Some functions for dir include readdir and opendir that we're going to use today. On the other hand, the dirent type is not similar to dir, but it's actually a storage object. The dirent data type consists of dino, dname, and dtype. Dino just means index node number for the file. Inode is basically another data structure in Unix style systems that store metadata about a file or directory. Basically, it has everything other than the name and the data itself. Dname obviously is self-explanatory, and dtype is also self-explanatory. There are two more variables inside this structure, but we will not be looking at those because we are not using them in this video. So let's look at the code. So here's the code loaded up. So first, obviously, we defined dir pointer dp. We made a pointer. Struct dirnt, same thing. We basically created two structures or two objects. There's a path variable here, but we will not worry about this path variable right now, and I'll get to it later. So first, we have dp equal to opendir path name. So this is where a mode switch happens. So basically there's two spaces. There's the user space and the kernel space. So when this code is executing, it's obviously the user space. So what happens is when this runs, opendir goes into the kernel space. It stops the execution of this program and goes into the kernel space. The kernel space basically checks whether this path name that we're giving this function is actually available on the system. And then it creates a 32 kilobyte buffer for us to use to put data into. So basically this is just validating that the path exists and whatnot, and creating a 32-bit buffer. And basically a pointer to that and then it gives you a pointer to that 32-bit buffer. Then we basically check if this pointer is not null, because if it's not null, that means it was valid and it figured it out. If it is, then we can't open the directory. In cases where we can't open the directory, it's usually because we don't have the permissions to open the directory, and that is not the case for now. So we have basic error handling here. Then we have this while loop. Obviously, it runs until it's null. Correct. So what does readdir do here? So dirent, which we named dirp here, is basically just a storage thing, right? So what ddir does is it goes into the kernel space and requests to put data inside dp. It basically fills out the not the entire 32-bit kilobyte pointer that we had, but it gets to whatever data requires it. Like if it overfills, we'll just pull it later. So basically, readdir returns the first element after going to the kernel space or doing a mode switch, and gives dirp the values of it. and basically checking if dirp has values, and then it keeps going. So what's the first thing that we do when we go into here? The thing is that each directory has two references. This one of them is a reference to itself, and one of them is a reference to its parent directory. So basically, because this is a recursive system, if we basically write a recursive call on these two addresses, it will basically call an infinite call, like recursive call stack, which will just break our program. Instead, we have this kind of error-free if statement to get out of these situations. Next, we basically check if the D type is a directory, right? Pretty straight, simple, right? Then we basically just print the path name that we had in conjunction with the name of the file, and we just print it. Next, because this is a directory, we need to recursively go into that directory and print out its values as well. So what we do is we use snprintf to basically curate a path, create a variable with this new path name that we have, and then we pass it to this list directory function that we defined, which is our function is list directory. If that doesn't work out, then we just do printf. Then we just do printf. Basically, if it's a normal file, we just print it out. Then we eventually just close the directory with this, because we don't want any memory leaks, etc. So, which handles the memory aspect for the DP, and there you go, we're done. Then this main function is just required to just call the function itself.